Okay, so I want you to just imagine the scene with me for a second.
All right, I'm with you.
We're traveling back in time, not just a little bit.
How far back are we talking?
We're going to September 20th, 1965.
Wow, okay. Mid-60s, that's a specific date.
It is. It's a Monday night, just past 9 o'clock, and we're in Elmira, New York.
Elmira, got it.
And the air is just thick, it's humid, sticky. You know, one of those late summer nights where the heat just clings to everything?
Oh, I know that feeling, like a heavy, wet blanket.
Exactly. And we're sitting in this back room of a pretty dim second-floor apartment.
Okay.
The windows are thrown wide open because, of course, there's no air conditioning. So you're just hearing the sounds of the neighborhood, you know, crickets, maybe a car passing by.
It sounds so ordinary, almost gritty, like the start of a noir film or something.
It is. It's completely mundane. It's domestic. You've got a husband and wife, Robert Butts and Jane Roberts, but they're not, you know, watching TV or arguing over bills. They're sitting in this sweltering room about to make contact with an entity known as Seth.
And I think for anyone who might be new to this, we should probably clarify what we mean by Seth.
Yeah, great point.
We're not talking about a ghost in the, the traditional Victorian sense. There are no rattling chains or moaning sounds.
Right. No spooky stuff like that.
No. What we're talking about is a highly articulate, very intellectual consciousness that's speaking through Jane Roberts while she's in a deep dissociative trance state.
And tonight, we're doing a really specific deep dive into that history. We're looking at just one session, session 189 from the early sessions, book 4 of the Seth Material.
And this one is.
It's a good one.
Oh, it's an absolute goldmine. I've read through, hundreds of these, and this specific session has everything.
It really does.
You've got high strangeness, you've got these incredibly specific, almost technical explanations of how reality is put together.
And you have my favorite part.
Oh, I know what you're going to say. The moment where a TV repairman literally interrupts a cosmic download.
Oh, no, it's just perfect. It's the perfect microcosm of the whole Seth phenomenon, isn't it?
It is. It's the profound smash right up against the utterly domestic, the physics of the universe colliding with a broken TV antenna.
Absolutely. So before we unlock the door to that back room, we should get the usual housekeeping out of the way.
Right.
We are distributing this deep dive completely free of charge on all major platforms. This is purely for educational purposes. We just want to explore the material, unpack the philosophy and see what we can learn from it.
And our mission for tonight is sort of threefold. First, we're going to unpack this just wild synchronicity involving a place called York Beach. It's a real head-scratcher.
It really is.
Yeah.
And then second, we're going to lift the hood on reality itself. I mean, we're talking about the literal chemical mechanics of how we create dreams and maybe even how we create ghosts.
Yeah, that part is chilling.
And third, we get to witness a live test, a remote viewing test where Seth tries to spy on a doctor who's miles and miles away.
Right.
So,
yeah,
buckle up.
Let's start with that synchronicity, the York Beach story, because it really sets the stage for how Seth sees the universe as this interconnected web.
Okay, so to get this, we have to rewind just a little bit, not to 1965, but just a few sessions earlier, to session 180.
Right.
So Robert Butts, Jane's husband, who Seth always calls Joseph, is trying to test Seth's clairvoyance. He's being a good researcher.
He's being methodical.
Exactly. He puts a photograph into a sealed envelope. He doesn't tell Jane what it is. He doesn't show it to her.
That's the double-blind protocol. Very important. You have to rule out simple telepathy between Robert and Jane.
Yeah.
If she doesn't know what's in there, she can't just be reading his mind or his facial expressions.
Precisely. And the photo Robert chose was a picture of Jane. She's standing on the waterfront at York Beach, Maine.
Okay.
And he had taken that picture the summer before in 1964.
So back in session 180, Seth starts giving impressions of what's inside the envelope. But he starts talking about two people, a man and a woman.
Yeah. And at the time, Robert just assumes, okay, he's talking about me and Jane.
Well, that makes sense.
Of course. Jane's in the picture. Robert took the picture. It's a logical assumption.
But it's wrong.
It's completely wrong. And this is where it gets that goosebumps level of spooky. Because on that exact same night, August 23rd, the night of session 180, a man named Dr. Instream and his wife were physically at York Beach.
And Dr. Instream, he's a researcher who was in correspondence with him, right?
Yes. But here's the key. He had never been to York Beach before in his life. He had no idea Robert was using a photo of that exact spot in an experiment that night. He just ended up there.
That's incredible. It's not like it's a major tourist hub he would have been planning to visit for months.
Not at all. And what's even funnier is that Dr. Instream later writes them a letter, and he asks, why did Seth stop at York Beach?
He thinks Seth was following him.
He assumed that Seth, this, spirit entity, was literally following him on his vacation and decided to pop in and haunt him for a bit.
Which, I mean, if you think of a spirit as a person without a body just walking around, that's a logical assumption. You'd think he followed the doctor there.
Of course. But in session 189, the one we're covering tonight, Seth corrects him. And the explanation he gives just completely reframes how we should think about coincidence.
He says essentially, I wasn't following you.
He says, you follow the signal.
Precisely. Seth says, and I'm quoting here, the Instreams did not consider going to York Beach. Neither was their visit a complete coincidence, although it might seem so.
And then he drops this bombshell of a concept.
All experiences have an electrical reality.
Okay, let's pause on that phrase. All experiences have an electrical reality. What does that even mean in this context? Because experience feels so abstract, right? It's a memory, a feeling.
It is, but Seth is giving it a physical property. He's implying that our thoughts, our memories, our intense focus, they create an actual, measurable electromagnetic signature in the environment.
So Robert and Jane, sitting in their apartment, focusing intensely on that photo of York Beach during the experiment in session 180.
Yes, they were pouring mental and emotional energy into that specific location.
Yeah.
They were visualizing it, trying to pull data from it, and that intense focus created a charge, you could say, an energy marker associated with that place.
So it's like they set up a beacon, like they lit a flare on the map of consciousness, and it just happened to be pointed at York Beach, Maine.
That's a great way to put it, yes. And Seth explains that Dr. Instream's wife, and this is a key detail, wasn't the doctor himself, but his wife subconsciously picked up on this connection.
She felt the pull.
She felt the pull of that electrical reality. She responded to it, and that subtle influence is what led them to decide, seemingly on a whim, to stop specifically at York Beach for the night.
That's mind-blowing.
It is.
Because it suggests that we're all just walking around in this massive invisible web of telepathic signals. You might decide to turn left instead of right, not because you chose to, but because someone you know is intensely thinking about a place down that street.
It completely dissolves the barrier between what we think of as internal thought and external reality. Seth is saying that locations can be charged with our consciousness, and other people can then pick up on that charge.
It makes you question free will in a small way. Did they choose York Beach, or were they just guided there by the electrical intensity of Robert and Jane's experiment?
It's a great question. And for Seth, this isn't a miracle. He's so casual about it. It's like, of course that's what happened. You guys are electrical beings. This is just physics.
Right, and that's the perfect pivot, because that brings us to the core technical teaching of this session. If we are electrical beings, then how do we build the world we see?
He moves right from the York Beach story into this incredibly deep discussion on the mechanics of images, specifically dreams and materializations.
This part of the session is so fascinating to me because it gets so biological. I think a lot of people expect spiritual texts to be all about, love and light and vague moral lessons.
Sure.
But Seth starts talking about metabolism and chemistry and nerve endings.
He does. And he draws a really clear distinction between dream images, the stuff we see when we're asleep, and what he calls physical materializations.
And when he says materializations, we can pretty much read that as apparitions. Or ghosts.
That's the implication, yes. Ghosts, apparitions, things that seem to be physically there but aren't solid.
Okay, so what's the difference? According to him, how do we build a dream versus how we build a ghost?
It all comes down to what he calls chemical excesses.
Chemical excesses.
Yeah. He says, and this is another quote, dream images are composed in part as a result of chemical excesses that are built up normally by the organism in the waking state.
Okay, so just by being awake, by walking around, doing our jobs, thinking, stressing about bills, we're building up this chemical pressure.
Right. That's exactly it. Think of your body as an engine. As it runs all day, it produces byproducts, like heat and exhaust. Seth is suggesting that our consciousness, our mental activity, produces a kind of chemical exhaust.
And sleep is the release valve.
Precisely. When we sleep, we discharge that excess energy by forming it into dream images. It's a natural, necessary process. Our nerve patterns and our metabolic energy are used to project these images, but internally.
But then he says you can do the same thing externally while you're awake.
Yes. That's the key difference. He says physical materializations are built up by bringing about this condition of excessive chemical action. Essentially, if you can generate enough of this chemical or electrical intensity and then project it outward instead of inward, you get a form.
A ghost.
An apparition, a materialization, yes.
He uses this term protoplasm, but he defines it in a really strange way here. It's not the biology definition.
No, not at all. In biology, protoplasm is the living stuff inside a cell. It's the stuff of life. But Seth is using it as a metaphysical concept, almost like a bridge.
He calls it a meeting ground.
Exactly. He defined it in this session as a meeting ground between physical matter and inner vitality.
Okay, let's unpack that.
Think about what that implies. We usually think of physical matter as one thing, atoms, molecules, the hard stuff you can touch. And we think of inner vitality or spirit or consciousness as something completely different. It's ghostly, ethereal, non-physical.
Two separate categories.
Right. But Seth is saying there's a substance, a medium, where these two things overlap. And we, as conscious beings, are constantly manipulating this stuff.
He says each individual has various ways in which he or she characteristically handles the protoplastic elements.
Characteristically handles. I love that phrase. It suggests we all have a unique style of projecting reality. You know, just like you have a unique handwriting or a unique walk, you have a unique way of handling this meeting ground between spirit and matter.
So my ghosts would look different from your ghosts.
Theoretically, yes. Or at least they would be constructed differently.
Yeah.
Because your personal chemical makeup, your metabolism, your specific nerve patterns are all unique to you.
And he says that our characteristic way of handling it in the physical world is also how we build our dreams.
Yes. The characteristic ways used by any given personality will also be used in the construction of dream images.
This has to connect to why some people are more, prone to seeing things, doesn't it? We all have that one friend who is always seeing spirits, and then another friend who has never seen anything spooky in their life.
According to this model, it might not be that the spirits are there for one person and not there for the other.
What would it be then?
It might be that the first friend has a metabolism or a psychic structure that is just more efficient at projecting those chemical excesses into a visible density. They're better at thickening the protoplasm, so to speak.
Thickening the protoplasm. That sounds like the title of a 1950s B-horror movie.
It really does. But the science Seth is proposing, and it's a weird science, is all about density. He says dream images have a density, but it's a density formed of electrical intensities.
Okay, so let's try to visualize this. When I'm dreaming, I'm lying in my bed, my eyes are closed, my brain is firing away, my body is processing chemicals. Seth is saying that energy isn't just staying inside my skull.
No, this is the wild part. He says, it is indeed as if extensions of nerve endings reached out in self-expansion.
Whoa!
Imagine your nervous system is like the root system of a tree. We usually think the roots stop at the boundary of the skin.
Right.
Seth is saying, no, the branches can grow out of the skin. They extend into the air around you, making these new invisible connections.
And those invisible branches are what build the dream world.
They're the scaffolding. And the chemical excesses are the bricks. You're building a temporary electrically dense structure in the room around you, and this creates a continuity between you, the thinker, and your environment.
And this leads to what is maybe the most chilling line in the whole session.
I think so, too.
Seth says, the form of the images is not an illusion. You simply have form without mass.
Form without mass. That just stops you in your tracks.
It does.
He's making a distinction. Mass weight, gravity, is not the same thing as form, structure, shape, density. You can have a structure that is very real, that has a density made of electrical intensities, but it doesn't have weight in the way a rock does.
So if I'm dreaming of a monster, or if I'm, let's say, hallucinating a ghost in the corner of my room, that thing has a density. It is electrically real.
According to Seth in this session, yes, it has an electrical reality. It is occupying a space in the energy environment of that room, even if you can't put it on a scale and weigh it.
Which suggests that our most subjective experiences, our fears, our dreams, our anxieties, are actually populating the room around us with these electrical forms.
It's a heavy thought.
That brings me back to what we were talking about in the intro. If we are constantly projecting these chemical excesses, these forms without mass, are we literally haunting our own houses?
In a very real sense, according to this model, we might be. We are filling our personal spaces with the energetic debris of our own psyche.
Okay. And just as our listeners are trying to digest this incredibly heavy metaphysical concept about creating ghosts with our own metabolism,
reality comes crashing in.
oh, it crashes in hard.
Yeah.
This is the famous segment 3, the repairman.
I love this part so much.
Me too.
Yeah.
So picture it again. Jane is deep in trance. Seth is explaining the secrets of the universe, talking about protoplasm and electrical density. It's exactly 9:100 p.m. And suddenly, bam, this loud knock on the window.
And we have to remember, they're in the back room. This isn't someone at the front door. This is a window in the back.
Yeah, which scares the living daylights out of Robert. He describes it in his notes as a loud, brittle sound.
I'd be terrified.
Me too. And Jane?
Snaps out of trance.
Yeah.
Instantly. Just gone. She's back. They look out the window and there's a guy.
A TV repairman.
A TV repairman at 9:15 at night.
Apparently. He's up on the porch roof. He's trying to fix an antenna that got loose in the wind or something, and his flashlight died. He needs to borrow a flashlight.
That is just, you can't make this stuff up.
You can't. So here's Robert, heart probably pounding, sweating, trying to act normal and not like they were just communing with an interdimensional being. And he hands this guy a flashlight through the window.
It's such a perfect, stark contrast. You have the electrical reality of the cosmos on one hand, and the very practical electrical reality of a broken TV antenna on the other.
And Robert is annoyed. You can tell from his notes. He's irritated because the whole reason they used that back room is to avoid people. He's worried the whole session is ruined.
But Jane is completely calm. She tells him not to worry about it, and when she goes back into trance, which she does almost immediately.
Seth addresses it, right?
Oh, yeah. And he is completely unfazed. He just says, interruptions in themselves will not bother us once a session is underway.
That is so cool. It's like, oh, a mortal required illumination. That's fine. Now, where were we? Ah, yes, the fundamental structure of reality.
It really validates the robustness of the connection, I think. There's this misconception that trance states are these fragile little bubbles that pop if you sneeze too loud. But Seth is demonstrating here that the inner vitality he talks about is powerful. It can handle a TV repairman needing a flashlight.
It also grounds the entire experience in reality. If this were a fiction story, you would never write in a TV repairman right in the middle of the big reveal. It's too random.
It feels authentic because it's messy, like real life is.
Exactly. And it also works as this perfect, unintentional transition. Because after this interruption, Seth notices how well Jane handled it, and he shifts gears. He starts talking about energy.
Right. Specifically, how Jane, and by extension, all of us, can recharge our psychic batteries.
It's the psychic refreshment segment. And honestly, I think this is incredibly valuable for everyone listening. Even if you have no interest in channeling entities, we all get burned out.
We all get that nervous energy, that feeling of being drained.
Totally. And Seth points out that earlier that same day, Jane had to go to the county records office. She was doing research for a book.
And she was dreading it. Her notes say she was nervous. She really didn't want to go.
But once she got there and got into the work, she actually felt better. She came back with more energy than when she left.
So why is that? What's the mechanism there?
Seth calls it psychic refreshment. And he says the key is diversion. This is the important word. He says, there is actually a quite natural and most effective manner of psychic refreshment, and most particularly when the conscious mind is somewhat diverted, as by music and so forth.
Diverted. So the trick is to not focus on the problem, to not focus on being tired.
Exactly that. He warns us not to rule with a heavy hand. The conscious mind, the part of us that worries and plans and analyzes everything to death, can actually block the natural flow of vital energy.
It gets in its own way.
It totally gets in its own way. And I want to dig a little deeper into this because he says something really interesting about so-called primitive peoples.
Yes, he says primitive peoples use it all unknowing.
What's he getting at there?
Well, he's pointing to a more intuitive way of being. In our modern analytical society, we're obsessed with conscious control. We want to understand the mechanism of everything. If we feel tired, we analyze why. If we feel creatively blocked, we try to force a breakthrough.
We rule with a heavy hand.
Precisely. But a primitive mindset, and he's not using that word to mean less advanced, but more like closer to nature, operates differently.
Oh, so?
If a person in, say, a tribal society needs an answer to a problem or needs to build up energy for a hunt, they might perform a ritual, they might dance, they might drum for hours.
That's diversion.
Yes. The dancing and the drumming completely divert the conscious analytical mind. They shut down the internal chatter, the part of you that's worrying and second-guessing. And that act of shutting it down allows the inner vitality to bubble up from the subconscious.
So the ritual isn't necessarily about petitioning external gods for help. It's a psychological technique to get your own ego out of the way.
Seth would call it a mechanism. He says, the intuitions act well under such circumstances, and these intuitions are stored subconsciously.
Okay, so let's make this practical. Let's apply this to someone listening right now who's stuck on a project at work. They're staring at a screen. They feel drained, empty.
Right. The typical advice is push harder, focus more.
Seth would say the opposite.
Exactly. Seth would say, give a conscious suggestion to your subconscious. Say, I will find the solution to this. Then stop.
Forget it and leave it alone.
That's the crucial step. You have to genuinely let it go. Turn on some music you love. Go for a walk in the park, work on a puzzle, do something completely different that engages you.
Because you have to trust that the subconscious is working on the problem in the background.
It's like typing a command into a computer and hitting the enter key. If you keep banging on the keyboard after you hit enter, you're just going to jam the machine. You're not helping.
You have to let the process run.
And you also have to trust that the energy is there for you to use. Seth makes a point of saying, you must understand that use of such energy does in no way suggest monopolizing it. You do not deprive others.
That's a really common fear, isn't it? This idea of scarcity. That if I take too much power or have too much success, I'm somehow draining it from someone else or I'm going to run out.
And Seth just refutes that completely.
Yeah.
He says, your own actions continue to produce additional energy. It's a renewable resource. The more you use it constructively by getting your conscious mind out of the way, the more you generate.
It's the difference between a stagnant pond and a flowing river. The pond just sits there, but the river is constantly renewing itself.
Perfect analogy. Jane's trip to the records office was the flowing river. She was moving, she was interacting with the world. Even though she was nervous, she was doing something. And that action, combined with the distraction of the task, allowed her own energy to recharge her.
This connects right back to the repairman incident, doesn't it?
How so?
Jane handled that interruption so well because she wasn't overthinking it. She just reacted. A guy knocked, she came out of trance, they dealt with it, she went back in. That spontaneity allowed the energy to keep flowing.
Ah, right. If she had sat there worrying, oh no, the section is ruined, can I get back into trance? Is the connection broken?
She would have created a blockage. She would have been ruling with a heavy hand.
So the lesson is, trust the machinery. You don't need to consciously tell your heart to beat, and you don't need to consciously manage your psychic energy. Just set the intention and then get out of the way.
Precisely. And speaking of testing the machinery, that brings us to the second half of the session. The clock strikes 10:00 p.m.
It's time for the main event.
The remote viewing test with Dr. Instream.
This is where it feels like a Cold War spy movie. Dr. Instream, the same guy from the York Beach story, had requested a clairvoyant test. He basically said, I'll be doing something specific at 10 p.m. on Mondays. See if you can tell me what it is.
So Jane, speaking as Seth, begins to give these impressions. And unlike a lot of psychic readings you hear about that are super vague, I sense a presence, I feel a warm energy.
Right, the stuff that could apply to anyone.
These are very specific, concrete, visual details.
Okay, let's list them, because the specificity is what makes this so compelling. First, Seth says Dr. Instream is speaking with 2 other men.
Or was very recently.
Right. Then he sees a chair. And not just a chair with a blue seat. A blue seat cover.
That's so specific. Why the blue seat, do you think? Of all the things in a room, why lock on to that?
Well, in a lot of remote viewing literature, and this tracks with later research, like from the Stargate project viewers, often lock on to things with very distinct colors or sensory textures first.
It just pops out from the background noise?
It pops. Blue is a strong, distinct visual frequency. It's an anchor. Same with the next thing he mentioned.
The slipper.
Yeah, he says Dr. Instream is wearing slippers or slipper-like shoes. Slippers implies a texture, a feeling of comfort, a specific sensory detail. Seth seems to be scanning for these sensory anchors to ground his perception.
He also mentions seeing a stacked-up affair as of irregular blocks.
And that is such a classic remote viewing description. Notice he doesn't say it's a bookshelf or it's a stone wall. He describes the raw data, the shape and the form.
Irregular blocks.
Exactly. When you're remote viewing, you don't usually see a psychic label that says bookshelf. You see the raw geometry, vertical lines, horizontal lines, stacking patterns. The analytical part of the mind then has to interpret that data, and guess what it is? Seth is just reporting the data.
He's being a good scientist about it. He's not jumping to a conclusion.
And that for me, adds a lot of credibility. If you had just said, oh, he's in his library reading Moby Dick, it might sound impressive, but it also feels a bit scripted, a bit too clean. But describing irregular blocks and something in the water in the distance, that feels like someone is genuinely peering through the fog and trying to describe what they see.
And then comes the real kicker.
The number.
The number. Seth says he senses Dr. Instream is thinking of a book, and specifically a number, like 218.
A page number, an address, or simply the digits. He's not sure of the context, but he gets the number.
Now, we don't get Dr. Instream's verification in this particular document. We'd have to look at the follow-up correspondence to see how accurate he was. But the confidence of the delivery is just striking. Seth isn't guessing. He's describing a scene as he sees it.
He's also describing his own process. He says things like, I believe he is now standing, or it is possible these men are inside. He's interpreting the data as it comes in real time.
It reinforces that whole idea of electrical reality again. Seth isn't magically knowing everything about Dr. Instream. He's accessing a signal. He's viewing the data stream being generated by Dr. Instream's consciousness at that moment.
And that implies it's telepathy again, at least in part. He's not just seeing the physical book. He's sensing the focus of Dr. Instream's mind on the number 218.
To Seth, a thought and a chair are both just
Patterns of energy. One is a dense, stable pattern, the chair. The other is a less dense, more transient pattern, the thought. But they are both real in his field of perception.
But then, after all that, Seth asks for their test.
Yeah, he says, do you have a test for me?
And this is the envelope test. Robert was prepared. He has a double-sealed envelope ready to go.
And inside is a single page from an old, unpublished novel that Jane wrote years ago called The Adult Time.
Robert picked the page completely at random. He folded it in quarters. He says in his notes he doesn't even really remember what's on that specific page.
And this is where we get to the humor of what you call the literal translation. This is segment 6.
I just love this part because it shows how messy and literal psychic data can be. Seth starts giving his impressions of what's in the envelope.
Okay, let's break them down.
Impression number 1, a fall or fall.
Right, and it turns out, on the page in the envelope, the story uses the word totter, and it implies that a character is about to fall down.
So that's a direct hit on the content of the page.
A conceptual hit, yeah.
Okay. Impression number 2, strongly circular design.
Now, this one's a little more abstract. Robert interprets this as a reference to the phrase, the world, which is mentioned in the text. The world is circular.
It's a bit of a stretch, but okay, I can see it.
It's an interpretation.
Impression 3, item of value.
And the story on the page mentions a station wagon. In 1965, for that family, a car is definitely an item of value.
Another hit. But then comes my favorite one. Impression 4, rubber.
Rubber. Okay, so Robert looks at the text. Is there a car tire in the story? A rubber ducky? A bouncing ball?
Nope, nothing. No mention of rubber at all.
But what was holding the stack of manuscript pages together in the file drawer before Robert pulled this one page out?
A rubber band.
A big, thick rubber band.
So Seth isn't just reading the words on the page.
He's picking up on the physical history of the object. The residue, if you will. The fact that this piece of paper was, until very recently, pressed up against a piece of rubber.
Or he's picking up on Robert's recent memory of handling the object, of taking the rubber band off.
It's this literal translation that Seth talks about. He says, the material on our own test this evening came through as a literal translation of concepts in the script.
It's so messy. It's not like he's just reading a PDF through the envelope. It's like he's grabbing these clusters of associated data. He gets the concept of fall from the story, but he gets the physical property of rubber from the rubber band.
It really highlights the challenge of being a psychic translator. We assume telepathy would be like sending a clean text message from one mind to another.
Right.
But what Seth shows us here is that it's more like trying to interpret a dream. You get symbols, you get sensations, you get physical residues all jumbled together.
And Robert has to be the detective, trying to piece it all together and figure out what fits where.
Which he does. And he concludes that Seth was remarkably accurate, just in this very strange, multi-layered way.
So as we wrap up, Seth signs off. He sends his heartiest regards, and the session ends at 10:49 p.m.
That's a solid 2 hours of work, with an interruption from a repairman.
Not bad. Okay, let's try to synthesize all this. We started with a bizarre synchronicity at York Beach.
Then we went into the heavy chemistry of ghost making.
Got interrupted by a TV repairman.
Learned a technique for recharging our brains.
Watched a live remote viewing demonstration.
And we ended with a rubber band.
It's a wild, wild ride of a session. But the core theme, the thread that runs through all of it, is this idea of connection.
Connection. Yes, absolutely. The connection between our inner chemical state and the apparitions we might see, the connection between our subconscious focus and the physical places we end up visiting, like York Beach.
The connection between our minds and the minds of others hundreds of miles away, like with Dr. Instream.
Seth is painting this picture of a universe where nothing is truly separate. My nerve endings, as he puts it, don't stop at my skin.
They extend out into the room. They can extend all the way to York Beach. They can extend to the page of paper inside a sealed envelope.
And we are constantly, unconsciously interacting with this vast, interconnected energy environment. We are electrical beings, sending and receiving signals all the time, mostly without even knowing we're doing it.
It really makes you look at your own life differently, that strange coincidence you had yesterday. Maybe it wasn't a coincidence at all. Maybe it was an electrical reality that you or someone connected to you created.
And that weird mood you felt when you walked into an empty room. Maybe it was the electrical density of a past commotion just hanging there in the air like a form without mass.
It's a chilling thought, but it's also kind of empowering. Because if we are the ones creating it, then we have the power to change it.
That's the key takeaway, I think.
Well, this has been an absolute pleasure to unpack. I feel like my own circuits are buzzing a little bit.
See, it's that psychic refreshment kicking in.
It must be. Now, if you want to get the full voltage of this material, you really cannot just listen to us talk about it.
Absolutely not. We're looking at one single session out of hundreds, thousands of pages.
Yeah.
You have to go to the source. The specific book we've been dissecting is the early sessions, book 4 of the Seth Material.
And you can find these books and you can support the incredible work of preserving this material by visiting the New Awareness Network. Their website is sethcenter.com/the early sessions.
Go there, browse the bookstore. It's an absolute treasure trove of information.
And remember, read it with an open mind, but keep your critical thinking cap screwed on tight. As Seth himself would say, use your discrimination. So we want to leave you tonight with one final thought to mull over, something to think about as you drift off to sleep, or as you're staring into the dark corners of your room.
We talked about how dream images are formed by our chemical excesses being projected outward, and we talked about how we leave these electrical traces in the places we visit.
So here's the question. If you are constantly projecting these energetic parts of yourself into the space around you, who or what is walking through the halls of your house right now, generated by your own sleeping mind?
Are you, in fact, haunting yourself?
Sweet dreams, everyone.